Hi, I'm Julie.
And I'm Caleb. Welcome to Nursing You, the podcast where we redefine nursing in today's healthcare landscape. Join Julie and I as we step outside the box on an unconventional healing journey.
Together, we're diving deep into the heart of nursing, exploring the intricate relationships between caregivers and patients with sincerity and depth.
Our mission is to create an open and collaborative experience where learning is expansive and fun.
From the psychological impacts of nursing to the larger implications on the healthcare system, we're sparking conversations that lead to healing and innovation.
We have serious experience and we won't pull our punches, but we'll also weave in some humor along the way because we all know laughter is often the best medicine.
It is, and we won't shy away from any topic, taboo or not. From violence and drugs to family and love, we're tackling it all.
Our nursing knowledge is our base, but we will be bringing insights from philosophy, religion, science, and art to deepen our understanding of the human experience.
So whether you're a nurse, a healthcare professional, or just someone curious about the world of caregiving, this podcast is for you.
One last thing, a quick disclaimer before we dive in. While we're both registered nurses, nothing we discuss here should be taken as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns you may have. The views expressed here are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of our employers or licensing bodies.
So let's get started on this journey together. Welcome to Nursing You, where every conversation leads to a healthier world.
I think we should just pick up where we left off, talking about the microbiome, fecal transplants. I guess starting with what a fecal transplant is for those who don't know, it's when someone has C. diff. We already did one little educational segment on C. diff, what it is, but a fecal transplant is one of the solutions. Julie and I participated in I think it was a CDC trial of fecal transplants. They were running in one of the hospitals that we worked in early in my career. And what it is essentially is someone whose microbiome has been completely destroyed by C. diff.
Let's explain what a microbiome is for people that might not know.
Well, the microbiome is essentially all of the bacteria that are responsible for breaking down our food. You know, we have the chemical processes of chemical breakdown, the enzymes and you know, hydrochloric acid is the first. You know, actually, it starts in the saliva. The saliva has millions of bacteria and of different types, and the enzyme process begins there. And as it moves through our gut, it essentially the bacteria assist in breaking down the food, and it consumes the same food that we consume. It consumes it you know, creates a lot of the gases that are created with the breakdown. A lot of those come from the microbiome. But like I said, when I explained what C. diff is and how the good bacteria releases an enzyme that locks the spore in a dormant state, and when that good bacteria is removed, it enables the bad bacteria to proliferate, which is really, I mean, gosh, I don't even think it's metaphorical as an extrapolation point out to the rest of our experience of life, that when good people do nothing, bad people proliferate, bad actions proliferate. I mean, I think it's, you know, the concept of as above, so below. This is as below, so above. You know, we're talking about the microbiome, but it you know, I think, well, we'll get to how the microbiome connects all of us a little bit later. But I think it's a poignant point to make, that it's happening at that micro level as well as the macro level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, and it'll be some science, some, you know, clinical information at the bedside level, and then we'll kind of take it out to a grand level, the world, the universe level, you know, a spiritual level, really, of how it can kind of metaphorically relate to where a person is in their life, where they fall in the whole consciousness of the world, and along with some things that we don't really think about that happen behind the scenes, as far as, genetically modifying things that destroy our microbiome, and how a lot of that may fall, a lot of the sequelae from that may fall on the nurse's lap, and it may not be in the front of the nurse's mind, but it is affecting everything that we're doing at work.
Mm-hmm.
Our one little shift a lot of times has a grander effect because of lots of other things. So we'll kind of weave in and out of that subject today. A lot of interesting conversation. Caleb is a very deep thinker and has a good way of pulling metaphors, really, is what I think, out of, relating things from science to spirituality, right back to the nursing field. So I think it's be a really interesting conversation. Yes.
Thank you. So do you want to explain the process of everything that happens in a fecal transplant? So our audience is kind of on the same page with us, and take them to the ICU bed where someone is dying from C. diff, overwhelming C. diff infection, to we're doing a fecal transplant. What's our process? What's the
policy and procedure for fecal transplant? No, I mean, there really was one.
Yeah,
there really is a policy and procedure, but the basics of it. And of course, we're not going to bring up articles or anything. You can Google it, and I'm sure it's on YouTube. I'm sure there's probably a video on it. But when a person is very, 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 very sick with C. diff, their gut cannot absorb anything. A lot of times they're on TPN because we don't put anything in the gut to make it work any at all.
What's TPN? Just for
TPN is a total peritoneal nutrition, which is actually, it's like a tube feeding, but it actually goes in the vein. So they all have a central line, and it's a big bag of fluids that has a lot of electrolytes, sometimes insulin, just all the nutrients, electrolytes, things like that, to keep our system running as best as it can without using the gut. So these patients are usually very, very sick. And, I don't know, these days they might be using fecal transplants sooner rather than later. When we kind of first started, it was for some of these later cases that everything had been done and nothing had worked. A lot of them had already been through surgery to take out a lot of that damaged gut. So a lot of them had a colostomy, ileostomy, depending on how far up they had to go, which is where they bring the bowel out to the outside of the stomach. And then, you have the bag on it. I remember putting vancomycin directly into the gut, which, we use vancomycin, but even to avoid going through the oral, through the esophagus, through the stomach, small intestine, we would put it right into, a transfusion right into the gut. So a fecal transplant, because what we produce in our gut, the feces that we produce, has some of this good bacteria and has a lot of the things that our gut can use naturally to perform well, optimal. So and I don't know who they is, somebody came up with the idea that, wow, what if we had someone who was kind of related, which I don't know if it has to be related, but these people were related. They were of the same family.
It has to be from the same home. Because they've cultivated the biome, the microbiome is
like what you're eating, where you're living around,
all the bacteria that exist in the home is really homogenous. Everyone shares the same. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we would ask the family, or the family was asked, to bring their stool in. So if you want to do Ziploc, a plastic container, what would they given? Were they given something special?
Surely a sterile container. Sure.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't remember. I think it did come in one of those samples.
Well, what we got was that. But I do know that it was then taken to the lab and it was put through some kind of like process, kind of like you would do like composting or I don't know, juicing. That's weird. But you push the juice
I don't remember
down.
that part.
Well, that's because that was done in the lab. So
Yeah,
we would get the juice. So the stool would be brought in, it would be taken to the lab, it would be compressed down. Like really, if you think about a juicer, you take the cucumber and the celery and you put it in and you get the juice and it separates the juice from like the pulp. So we didn't have any of the solid, it was the liquid. And so then the lab would bring us the liquid stool, whatever was left over, and we would take a 60cc syringe and pull it up and basically give it to the patient, either through their stoma or an NG tube, maybe.
It had to bypass the stomach.
Had to go through the stoma.
It had to go through a Dobhoff. So Dobhoff bypasses the stomach, and it's got a little metal.
It's longer. It's like a long NG tube. So it's tiny. It's used for kind of long-term feeding, but it does. It goes past the stomach and into the small intestine.
Yep.
So then we would.
Otherwise, it would make them terribly sick.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
And it didn't smell. I mean, it didn't smell good, and it was weird. I always thought this is very weird. This is so weird that I'm giving. And I think we had to sign it off on the MAR, and
sure.
all that. But whatever it was, really, really, really made a difference in the patient. Sometimes overnight, you could tell a difference. They, if they were becoming septic from the infection of their gut and it had become systemic throughout their body, that you might notice a change in their vital signs. They might be less tachycardic. Their blood pressure might stabilize out a little bit to where you could come off some of the blood pressure medicine that you were using. And over time, it would literally heal their gut and the insides of it and allow for their body to start making their own good bacteria and building back up their microbiome, which is just the inner linings of the inside of the gut. But interestingly, also, I don't know if people have heard of the gut-brain connection, because they're neurotransmitters that are in our brain, serotonin, dopamine. I'm sure there are others. I'm one of these people who if I'm going to explain something, I really have to look it up and read it. I don't retain a lot. I retain some, but not a lot. But there are neurotransmitters that are in our brain. They are also found in the gut. So that then you could connect to kind of a mental health as well, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's the gist of a fecal transplant, which is putting in healthy stool to a very, very sick person.
To recultivate the microbiome.
Recultivate the microbiome, yes, so that it improves that microbiome. And it really actually works.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And so in thinking about that, you have come up with some interesting ideas about that, to me, make complete sense.
Well, it's, so I've researched it quite a lot. All my ideas are kind of predicated on the real life experience that we share. And then over time, because we were right on the front end of that. I mean, that trial was, I think really unheard of at that time. And I believe part of the reason that we were chosen for that is that we had a pretty prolific strain of C. diff that brought the CDC into our hospital. And because essentially every person that got that strain ended up dying. And we traced it back to, I believe, the curtains in the room. The housekeepers weren't cleaning the curtains. Do you remember that?
Yes, right. Yes, I do.
So all of the data that's been coming out over the last 10 years, once the dots started connecting for me, that PTSD really, it was damaging the lining of our gut. then I was like, okay, what's going on here? Because I've got all this experience of watching people go from their deathbed to being discharged from the hospital. And that's a miracle, because that just doesn't happen. So, I mean, not everybody that gets that survives, that's
Right.
unrealistic.
Yeah.
It's not a for sure thing, but the people that it helped, it was profound.
Yeah. Dramatic.
Yeah, it was dramatic. And the dramatic thing is, like I said last week, they go from completely emaciated, like they're just skeletons, and they are just sick, and it's like the essence of who they are is just gone. And they're operating at such a low level of consciousness. So then to read about, all the NIH studies that are discussing how our mental health is impacted by the microbiome that we cultivate, making those connections, it just became very real to me. Like and so I've spent, a lot of time just working it through the mental workshop.
Caleb's mental workshop. Yeah.
So, huh?
Thank God we have Caleb's mental workshop.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. No, there's.
So there's so many things. So the NIH, well, it's not just the NIH. There's so many studies out there. You can go find a dozen articles about this. They're linking our microbiome to our mental health, to our physical weight, how much we weigh. So there are strains of bacteria that if it's found in the gut, you're overweight. There are other strains, if they're found in your gut, that cultivate skinniness. I mean, it's like this microbiome thing is really controlling so much of who we are. And
it's very individual. So is it genetic, do you think?
Well, I think genetics absolutely plays a part of it, because, well, I mean, I think that gets into epigenetics a little bit, that our bacteria are really integrated with our DNA, and that's a whole another branch of the conversation, epigenetics. I'm fascinated by it, but I don't fully understand it. That's a very complex subject that I would need, to really delve into. So all of these ideas that I'm sharing are just that. They're just ideas. It's not like I've researched anything. It's just pairing it with the profound experience that we've had. So one of the ideas, it's also linked to depression. So some of the different types of bacteria are correlative with either positive or negative mental health. So to me, it almost makes it raises the question of, could kissing be a means of transference of these good or bad bacteria? We live in a pretty promiscuous society, and that bacteria, and that has only gotten, more rampant over the years. And I certainly don't want to, bash anyone for their choices or how they're living or anything. But what if our mental health was deteriorating because depression was spreading through kissing? Or
it's not unlikely. I mean, it's not. There's a possibility.
Yeah, why not?
Right.
It's a wild idea, but I mean, there's, what was it, 10 million, or it's like 10 to 80 million bacteria are exchanged in one 10-second kiss.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild.
It is.
So, it would be something for an academic to study and really dig into, but it makes a lot of sense. What else? Oh, I remember. If it's controlling our emotions in that way, it kind of takes me to the hive mindset, that if the thing that is healing the person that's sick with C. diff is the rest of the, quote unquote hive that is in the home, because that was the key. They had to be from the same home, because it's his genome, or not genome, but his microbiome that is being recultivated. Even though it's in somebody else, they share such a similar microbiome that is what heals him. So if you take that and extrapolate it out to the rest of society, like the idea that our ability to experience joy and happiness, not to do away with the personal accountability for cultivating joy and mindfulness and all the things. I mean, that actually becomes, if the idea that our microbiomes are connected, like you think about someone on the other side of the world, or the other side of the country, or the other side of the state, and then within a few hours they text you and you're like, how did you know? And you're like, and we're connected. That's what the answer always is. We're connected. What is that? I mean, that's to me is like some very, very low grade experience of what it would mean for us to be really in an expanded consciousness. Like that, at an expanded consciousness where we're really utilizing and maximizing our capacity and our brain power, we would be able to communicate in profound ways that we can't even really dream about, because it's so far beyond our ability to perceive at this point, because we're so constricted in the state that we're in.
Well, and give an example of that. So we were talking about how you can be in a room in maybe a critical situation with a nurse. It doesn't have to be critical. In there doing something. I mean, maybe you walk in and maybe she's trying to get a Foley in, or maybe she's trying to get the patient to take meds from applesauce, or something. And you walk in, and that nurse doesn't even have to say any words. As another nurse or healthcare provider, sometimes it can be respiratory therapy, they can be CNA, that doesn't matter. Go in, and you don't have to say words. You are communicating in some other language, something you
some
are
higher realm,
a higher realm between. I know what you need. Let me get this for you. And you don't even have to say any words. If grandma is grabbing and you grab and she grabs a spoon, and you just know to go in and maybe hold grandma, or get another thing of applesauce, or distract, or without, no one has to say, can you distract her, can you hold grandma? You just, it's a knowing, in a critical situation, patient comes to the ER, those nurses are working in symphony.
Yes.
Like an MI, for instance.
Oh yeah.
Done what needs to be done, or any kind of code, any situation like that. It is like a symphony without anyone really even having to talk. There is something there. There is something in that kind of environment that is greater than just words coming out of your mouth. It's and it's like a hive mentality, which you said.
A hive mind. We all know what has to happen.
It's a vibration or a something in there, and
it's a mix of all the training that we have, all the experience that we have, all of it just mixed together to create the symphony.
Yeah. And so how does that relate to microbiome? How does that, can you relate situations like that?
Well, one of the thoughts, probably controversial, one of the thoughts that I've had is that when families started being broken up, when fast food came into the picture, we started eating foods outside. We started eating more outside the home than inside the home. What that did was that it stopped cultivating that familial bacterial milieu, if you will.
Yeah.
The cultivation of the family microbiome really diminished. I mean, the home, obviously, obviously that still is a critical piece, but the mom or the dad that's cooking, their hands, regardless of how, I mean, unless you do a sterile cleansing of your hands, you're transferring bacteria. Just a fact. You pick up the handle on the pan or the spatula or whatever.
Oh yeah, the wash rag or anything that's just right there.
Yeah. And back in the day, hand washing was a thing, but not like it is today. We've sterilized a lot of everything, and I think it's not good for us. I think there's a balance to be struck. I mean, I think that's true in a lot of ways, that finding balance is the key. But so that's at the family level. But what I'm, one of the fun things to think about is if the bacteria is impacting our mind, our conscious mind, our ability to perceive information so profoundly, as all the data suggests, then at some level, it's that bacteria that's been cultivated and shared amongst the friends that creates that connection that stays with you. I mean, you have memory. I mean, you have the memories. Like, what is it that passes through the consciousness that causes you to remember the person in the first place? I don't think anybody has that answer. The idea that you thought about this person and then they called you, so they were thinking about you, implies that there's this broader hive mind that is underlying our ability to perceive. And I guess to get really philosophical and current with our modern state, the idea that artificial intelligence is offering us, what is it that Neuralink and all these implantable neurological devices, what is it that they offer us? It's offering us instant access to information that would take multiple lifetimes to cultivate in an education. You could never, I mean, maybe Elon Musk has it,
Right.
I don't have access to that. I'm very limited, but it's offering that expansion of consciousness to a degree that we could never attain in a single lifetime. And so one of the tools in my mental workshop is to play the opposite game. What if it's happening on one side, it has to be happening on the other. And the idea is that if that opportunity is of an expanded consciousness, the experience of an expanded consciousness is happening in our technological world, then it must be happening in our real world, not in an augmented way, but it's happening in a real way. That's as simple as it gets. That we have the capacity, somehow we have the capacity to elevate our consciousness. And the experience of being in that room when someone's coding and we don't need words is an experience of that expanded state. I mean, I don't have the answer on how to get to that.
Right. You wouldn't be able to say. You can hardly even describe it.
Yeah, but like, so here's another interesting thing. In art, there was a Russian artist that was emerging in Russia doing abstract art at the same time that Picasso was. They never met, never had any connection whatsoever. But and it wasn't just those two. There were many abstract artists that were emerging at the same time, which indicates this hive mind, that the unawareness of the hive mind, that it's time for this idea to emerge. And so multiple people received the message that it was time for this idea to emerge. And so if you play with that idea, if I'm having the idea of expanded consciousness, there are hundreds and thousands of other people that are having this idea of consciousness expansion. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, just the idea of Neuralink is just like, what, like,
Well, explain what that is for people who
Well,
don't.
Neuralink is essentially so let me share the positive of Neuralink. The positive of Neuralink is that it gives people with severe spinal cord injuries, high spinal cord injuries, the ability to provide for themselves in a way they never could otherwise. They can use Neuralink to communicate with computers, to write, to edit, to command functions on computers that they could never accomplish otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's already, I believe that's already happening. They did the monkey trials, I believe. Which that makes me. I mean, why are we testing on monkeys?
Yeah.
Why are we like what?
I know
That I don't like that at all. So the human trials are underway now. So that is a very positive thing. I mean, one of the problems is we haven't even figured out how to handle data breaches in the technology that we already have.
Yeah.
So I have that's heavy withdrawal for me, or a heavy drawback. Like. Mm-hmm. You're just going to hand over your ability to navigate your cognitive functions independently with sovereignty? Just going to hand that over?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right. Well, it's a very interesting concept about the microbiome and PTSD, mm-hmm. and how traumatic events or chronic stress changes the microbiome over time.
Well, okay, so think about this. How many times have you been sprayed with fecal matter?
Yeah. How close do you have to get to it? Even if
how close do you have to get to it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been real close.
Yeah.
Real close. And how long sometimes those patients are there that you care for them over and over and over and over again. They're in the same room. So you also are now in that room. And you're in that room at least every 2 hours.
Yes.
At least. And up and close and personal with that patient, turning and their sheets and touching. And yes, we wear gloves, but that is, and if they have C. diff, then yes, we are in a gown. But a lot of times they don't even have C. diff. So sick patients who are stooling, even if.
Like, how many thousands of people's DNA do we carry?
Right.
We are carriers of the entire collective. Man, all the ideas that I've already shared about, the family being connected through the microbiome, and that we have taken on all of the communities, for lack of a better word, shit.
We've taken on all their shit, which is so true. And I think, a concept that is rarely, I've never put the connection there. But, nurses wonder sometimes, healthcare workers wonder sometimes why, and maybe you've never even had a lot of traumatic things happen. You're like, I'm different. Like, I feel different. Or, I mean, it could be just the interaction with other people.
Uh-huh. Well, I think the personal action, or where it becomes our responsibility, is figuring out how to cultivate joy and happiness that really transcends those things, that those become structures in your life. Having the hobbies, having deep connections. God, when those deep connections are broken, because in a large part because you need to just go home and be silent. You need to go home and just sit in a dark room. Your kids don't understand that. Your partner doesn't understand that. Nobody can understand that. Figuring out what brings you joy keeps you above the threshold of falling into depression.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking too, is knowing that can be part of why you're not able to, handle shit that's going on at work. Or that's a good word for it, is a threshold, and try to stay above that. It won't leach in so bad. Mm-hmm. It kind of, like when I was thinking some kind of protection, some kind of protecting yourself from, the energy of others, or, just the taking on other people's stress and the stress that they're going through, either a patient or a coworker, or, there's a lot of things in the hospital that are stressful, and, we're all individuals and deal with it all differently. And so, you can work with a crew who, it just rolls off their back. It's really not that big of a deal. And that's one kind of energetic environment. And then other nights you can be there and, like everyone is bitching, and you can feel that. And I think maintaining a level of positivity, happiness, and then people will be like, well, if I'm around them, then how can I be happy? Well, it's a choice. So
you have a choice. Yeah.
You're not letting them leach into you. And, you've got some kind of imaginary, suit or, blue gown. I don't know, put on your blue gown. Yeah. Put on the blue gown to keep that from absorbing, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
And something I've clearly never thought about. Now,
but also, you sent me the interview with Tucker Carlson. I'm not a huge fan.
Well, right, you're right. And I came across it from someone else who loves him, but and she prefaced it by, I know you don't like him a lot. I was like, I don't know him, so I can't say I don't like him. I just over the years, and mostly during COVID when I was watching a lot of news, I wasn't right either. So let's just call it a truce. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a very, very interesting interview.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
We can post a link to that because it is fascinating, and it connects right to this microbiome conversation. Yeah. That the idea that the microbiome is so integral to our overall health, mental and physical, and we have by integrating by integrating industrial farming and genetically modifying our foods, and then the FDA cohorts it's FDA, Federal Drug
Administration.
Yeah. So hold on. Is it
Food and drug?
Sorry.
Yeah. It seems federal, but yeah.
What's that?
It seems federal, and I'm sure. I mean, it is federal.
Yeah, it is very federal.
Food and drug.
And drug.
Right. Interesting.
That we can genetically modify the foods, and then we can modify the drugs to match those genetics. It's like, what are we even doing? Why are and this video that you sent, it's just right on point with this whole idea and how
it kind of explains why we are where we are now.
Yeah. It's very sad. And, we listened to that after the last episode where we talked about finding the positive, and this is the modality of provision of care that we have right now, and the doctor that is talking, she abandoned her career to pursue the fight, pushing back against these things that are in place. It's convicting. It's convicting to see her take such a hard stand, and I don't know how she afforded to do that, but she saw it earlier than any of us saw what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, how you said the ideas come. So to those that they come, it probably not only came to her, but it came to other people, but they just come. And, it's not a diss to other people like, oh God, why didn't I think of that? It's not that. It's just, it's their time. It's the time for this to come.
Yeah. Right.
And,
right.
Yeah. The book, her name is Casey Means, Means. And she wrote it with her brother, actually. And the book is called Good Energy. So we'll put a link down there. It's just, it's very interesting. And, I think overall, it takes a lot of the shame away from, like for me, that it's not all my fault. It's not because I was weak. It's not because I just couldn't handle it. It's not because, I should have been a better nurse, or I should have been able to do this. I should have been able to manage my kids and working like other people do it. There's a lot of shame that and negative self-talk that I went through that I had to come out of for years. Why do I drink so much? Why do I tell myself I'm not going to drink when I drink? And then just all of those things. But there's so many more behind the scene things that are happening to
influence that.
Yeah, to influence and pull you down. That do pull you down, that you do not see. You do not see all of this happening.
You're right.
And it sometimes feels overwhelming when you're introduced to concepts that you've never thought of before, and it feels overwhelming and it feels unfair and it makes you mad, and you want to like, oh my God, we got to cure that. We got to fix it all. But that's not, you have to just stay away from that kind of thinking and just take it like, what can I do in my daily life to just be better and to make me feel better, be better for my family, be better for the people who I influence, who I'm around. And that's kind of, again, back to that threshold of keeping yourself at this level so you're not taken down, you're not drawn down into that just very negative and dark place that you can get to, not only just choosing but just being mentally taken there by the way that our bodies are working and all the influences that are around us all day every day in the workplace and just in our environment where we live, and because we just live here on earth and it's just here,
right?
And that's just the way it is. So not letting it overwhelm you and if feeling overwhelmed, to just literally think of what can I do? What can I do positive for myself today? What can I do to make this better, to make me feel better? Oh, I can think, oh, it's green outside. I have home. I have a voice. I can do things. I can change my mind. I can choose to be happier at work. I can choose to not even work there anymore. You have a lot to get you out of that headspace of like doom and gloom of, everything that we're not being told behind the scenes. So
right.
I don't want people to focus on that. I want awareness is key but take it as a helpful dose, not as something that's going to take you farther down.
Yeah, that's our mission.
That is our mission.
Not focus on the negative, but not ignore the negative, but
right.
Cultivate more positivity.
For sure. Yeah.
So as you were talking, it would be, you said, so how do we like, what can we actually do to mitigate the damage of taking on the community's, stuff? Have you ever heard of colonics?
Yes.
What if we found a colonics professional to come in and like finish this conversation, like cleaning out our system to like purge our microbiome of all that we've carried, all that we are carrying of the community. I don't know that we could ever get rid of all of it, but just
but even just knowing what and if that makes a difference.
Yeah, would that make a difference?
So, so hey, anybody who's listening, if you know anybody who does that or has a lot of background in gut health that would want to come on, and we would love to just chat, because it's such an interesting conversation, and I think it matters. Clearly, it matters what we put in our gut. I mean, you can eat, fast food every day, and a certain way or certain places, how you're going to feel versus going to a nice salad bar, maybe having a nice chicken and vegetable meal, you feel different. So we know this, but to get into the real science of it, I think would be a very interesting conversation, relating it back to mental health for us, Yeah.
So what we're asking for is somebody that knows some shit.
Yeah. Who knows how to deal with shit.
Some shit.
Yeah. I mean, they know their shit about shit.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So we're also going to start asking for what we want, which is we want this podcast to be shared. And we want people who need to hear, who want some laughter, who want some lightheartedness, maybe some, some of these serious concepts that we get into. But the only way to do that is for them to find it is to share it. We are on YouTube now, and we will be doing situations like this each week. We'll on Sundays, our new episodes are going to air. Just bear with us. The technology is getting better and better every week as we do this. If you could subscribe or follow on the podcast, share it on your social media, and then comment. We love, and I always hear people say that on their podcast. Oh, we love it, but we really do love it. It's so fun to hear what people think and any other ideas that you have that like we could talk about, or questions that you have, or questions to episodes that we could like follow up, whatever, because what I think we're trying to do is build a community of nurses who just want to have real talk. They want to be authentic. This podcast is very organic. We don't do a lot of planning. We don't really have like a outline. Our conversations are very organically, we just talk. And that is something that we want to kind of keep it lighthearted like that, so that we can talk about tough subjects and things that don't feel good in a feel good way, Yeah. So we're just asking for what we want, which we should. Everyone should, because we're all divine. We all should get what we want.
All possess a spark of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.
It was fun.
So fun. Always fun.
Always
fun.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Keep the dialogue going by connecting with us on social media posted in the links below, or by visiting our website.
Together, let's continue to redefine nursing and shape a brighter future for those we care for. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep nurturing those connections.
And don't forget to be kind to yourself.